Hi, I'm Nerdgasm Girl, also known as Diana, also known as the Busty One. And today I wanted to talk about a quick little nerdy tidbit that's been bouncing around in my head for a while. I've been talking about doing this particular video post for a while, and I'm finally getting around to it. So what I wanted to talk about today, and ignore the rapidly moving hands and just stare at my boobs if you really don't care what I'm saying. But what I wanted to talk about today is companions in the Firefly universe and what they would mean in the real world. Um, our world sees sex trade as something filthy, immoral, kind of beneath normal people. Um, ask any professional dom, escort, hooker, cam girl, whatever. And basically every single one of them will tell you that they constantly hear, "But you're so smart. Why would you do something like that?" There's this idea that if you work in the sex trade, there's this ridiculous amount of desperation involved in the decision. That every single person in the sex trade is a crack addict or had an abusive father. That there's this stigma that basically states that we can't be normal people. The idea of someone in the sex trade that is normal, well-adjusted, functioning person of society, it is just beyond some people. Bankers are normal and well-adjusted. Whores have issues. Well, flip that around and look at the Firefly universe. Joss Whedon has always been good about strong characters. And Inara is a perfect example. She is in a position that in our world holds an extreme amount of stigma. In our world, she would be considered filthy. Um, Everyone would think she's diseased. Um, while the same feelings from our world do seem to exist in the Firefly universe, they're very, very much lessened. There are still men that consider a companion nothing more than property. And you can see that in Shindig and Heart of Gold. No one accuses of, you have people that, tiptoe around the word whore and kind of look at them contemptuously. But for the most part, no one is calling a whore stupid or uneducated. And that's because companions are specifically trained. They go through years of education, almost like a doctor would. They are taught to interpret body language. They can play music. They can hold a conversation at all walks of life. They can read a person to the point that they know their needs and wants and reactions before they do. Saffron in Our Mrs. Reynolds is a perfect example of that. She played every single person on the ship, including Inara. Because people don't think about it. A companion isn't just about being flirty and sweet and, oh yes, sex me now. She played Inara. She got her pissed off. She knew exactly what buttons to hit. And she hit them. That type of training is just fantastic. The idea of teaching someone like that. If I were offered the opportunity to take that type of training, I would. And I think that's one of the most fantastic things about the companions in the Firefly universe, is they do have that type of training. The martial arts alone is a fantastic idea. If half the women I knew in the sex trade had martial arts training, there'd be some dead dudes. Stiletto heel through the forehead comes to mind. Now, as much as I really love the companion idea, it's not all like unicorn farts and rainbow splooge. There are parts of it that are like, you have to kind of look at the TV show a little deeper and go, okay, something is going on here. You learn, at least with its licensed companions, that they're basically unionized. This has some advantage and some disadvantages. As we see in SAFE, companions are issued a standard med kit to protect them from diseases. And once again, mentioning Shindig, they have the luxury of being solicited by clients and picking and choosing who they like. It's not just some guy walks up with a fistful of cash and you're stuck, whether he's a douche or not. This all kind of leads to the assumption that there is a network or some form of government at work behind the scenes. And at first glance, that's like, okay. And then you take a minute to think about it. On the surface, it seems great. It seems legit. But after a moment, you realize that Dick Cheney is your pimp. No one wants that. So, anytime you have something as varied and complex as the sex trade becomes standardized, there are going to be problems. Big problems. There are arguments on the internet all over it right now. Because some people are like, hey, let's go to legalized prostitution. If people didn't think of it as a crime, it would be safer. One big argument is safety. And that is a big argument. We see in Heart of Gold and Our Mrs. Reynolds what type of life an unlicensed companion is subjected to. So, why would anyone choose something different? If you're guaranteed safety, if you're guaranteed the ability to blacklist someone that hurts you, disrespects you, if you're given free medical, why would you turn around and leave that all behind to be on some, dusty world in a tinfoil house? The answer is pretty simple. To avoid oppressive rules and expensive legislation. And, come on, education. Has anyone been to college? The thing about college is that it costs money. A lot of it. And the thing about medical insurance is it also costs a lot of money. So, you've got medical, but you're paying out the ass for it. You've got a great education, but once again, paying out the ass for it. Basically, anytime you have any form of bureaucratic structure, it gets mired down with all sorts of costs and obligations. If you've ever worked in a hospital or tried to run a large website, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Things start out very, very, very simple, and then they grow and expand, and new expensive become necessary. The companions are capable of galactic communication, and humanity has grown to the point where we inhabit hundreds of planets. If Facebook has to throw those crappy ads at you to pay for bandwidth, what do you imagine it takes to run the sexy Facebook of the galaxy? It's not a great leap to assume that money comes out of a companion's profits. So we're bleeding money on tuition costs, we're bleeding money on medical insurance and sexy advertising. We can also assume that the ability to blacklist and protect yourself from problem clients is security that you pay for. If Heart of Gold taught us anything, it's that an unlicensed companion is basically helpless. And that Mal doesn't get laid often. But totally different thing. With all that cash coming off the top, there's going to be a few brave or desperate few that are going to run, find themselves a little piece of rock and cut themselves in, which means it's probably illegal. At the very least, companions are expected a certain amount of loyalty to their house. In Heart of Gold, there's a quick intercourse between Nandi and Inara where Nandi says, "The house would tell you not to come. I know they ordered you to shun me when I left." Put it in layman's terms, basically, leaving your pimps gets you blacklisted. And if the tinfoil building Nandi's people are living in is any indication, you're blacklisted big time. And you can tell Mandy's people aren't trained the same way. They don't have the same polished feel. They don't have the same confidence. In fact, when Kaylee looks over and goes, "Ooh, they've got boy chords," you kind of get a pan of all of the companions in Mandy's house just standing around, and they all look very awkward and uncomfortable. That's not something you'd ever expect to see from a companion. They're trained better than that. So obviously these people haven't had the same training, but they're not sharing their money. They may make less because they're off on some tiny little planet with just like a single settlement, but they keep what they earn. And I know a lot of people that would kill for that. I mean, have you met any grad students? Now, what are we talking about in our world? Well, for the most part, prostitution is legal, and that means hundreds of thousands of people a year are arrested, warned, whatever, for buying or selling. Usually it's money that they can't pay. So all the money it takes to book them, hold them, find them, stand them up in front of a judge gets paid by the state. You pay for it. Which means if you pay taxes, you probably bailed out a hooker. And then they just go back out and start the same process over because it's their way of life. They just hope they don't get caught again. If the modern sex trade was treated like companions, you wouldn't have all of that. In fact, their wage would probably be end up being taxed by the government, which means more money to fix that damn pothole you swear is going to bust your tire every day you drive to work. And not just prostitutes would benefit. As a member of the BDSM community, I know dozens of men and women that sell their services as dominants and submissives. Generally, there's no sex involved, but they still have to be extremely secretive and discreet because of the sexual connotations that most people associate with BDSM. That and every time BDSM shows up in the media, it's a freak show. Someone was murdered or accidentally killed, or accidentally killed in a TV show, or someone on the news pretended they were in BDSM and shot their wife in the head. There's a very negative view of BDSM in general, and I hate seeing it. Those people you see on the media, on the news, they're not really into BDSM. They're just rationalizing abuse, or they're really, really dumb. Huge difference between them and the people I know and love in the community. And I suggest everyone get to know your local BDSM community, because we're good people. And we only bite when you tell us to. But what I'm trying to get at is that a universe that is accepting of their sexuality as the Firefly universe seems to be, would likely be much more open to other forms of passionate expression. Inara mentions in our Mrs. Reynolds that feet washing is her speciality. What if there are other companions out there with specialties like cock humiliation or flogging? Most of the people I know in the BDSM community are in the closet, hiding who they are because their jobs, friendships, families. All of them might be at risk because of the taboo nature of the lifestyle. The freedom of the Firefly universe would be amazing to people like me, my friends, and it's something I would love to see in my lifetime. Now, the bad stuff. You've seen our world, right? Our politics, our religions. We can't even decide if it's okay for people that love each other to marry each other. So, what on earth makes anyone think we could accept our sexuality in such a big way? Well, there's only one answer. Large sums of money. You think California legalized medical marijuana because they thought it was a good idea? No. They can tax the hell out of it. And people are so willing to pay for it because they know that there's no chance of getting arrested as long as they have that little tiny card that says it's okay. Beyond that, they also know that the weed they're getting is safe. It's not cut with something. It's not. Um, there were cases a couple years ago of someone selling uh, tobacco, ridiculous amounts of really strong tobacco with weed, and people were getting tobacco poisoning. You have no worry of that with medical marijuana. You pay more, but you don't have to fear the cops. Uh, it's a win-win situation. Legalized prostitution is the same way. You pay more, but no fear of being arrested, and they're paid to stay disease-free. No embarrassed visits to the doctor 2 towns over so no one will recognize you. And no chance of being in a cell overnight with some big dude named Bubba. Once the legislation passes, you have your houses, your companion trading grounds, but then you'd also have the Bible thumpers. Holding signs, shouting into megaphones. It would be like Occupy Wall Street, but with pussy. Our world's not very understanding, but I'm assuming that when the idea of companions first popped up, they weren't too popular in the Firefly universe either. I think instituting the same laws in our world would be a great idea. Do I think that'll actually be functional right away? Not a chance. But maybe if we all could stop masturbating in the dark, trying to keep quiet so no one would know, just maybe one day we could have a world that's accepting of our collective sexuality and is fine with it. I mean, Jeebus, we all have genitals, barring tragic factory accidents, and most of us want to use them. I mean, accept it and take a step toward a better world. I guess the big thing I'm trying to say is I look at the Firefly universe and I see the companions and I see that same potential in our world. There are already places across the world that have started legalizing prostitution and they're doing a great job of it. But then you still have various countries that are really unaccepting of sex. There are still people that are pissed off about sex ed in high school. At least once a week, I drive past someone picketing a Planned Parenthood place. I mean, seriously. I look at the Firefly universe and I see so much potential. That is the world I want. I want a world where I can say, yes, I am a cam girl. And yes, it's a respectable job. I provide a service. I show people my tits. I make people happy. And I have fun doing it. But that's not the world I live in. I have to stay quiet. I have to be a little discreet about it because the rest of the world doesn't accept that boobies actually exist. So I want anyone that has listened to this blog to go outside. You know what? Go to dinner tonight and have a conversation about sex. That's the best thing you can do. Doesn't have to be this conversation. Just talk about sex. Because if people were to start talking about it, there'd be less taboo about it. You know what? There are vaginas and there are penises, and sometimes there's a combination of both. Talk about it. And maybe if you do, one day, several generations from now, we could have a planet that actually admits that they knock naughty bits. And that's exactly what I'm after. Anyway, so that's my spiel for tonight. This is going on my Tumblr, so if you're watching it, congratulations, you found my Tumblr. You can also find me on Twitter at NerdgasmGirl. Pretty easy since that's the name of my Tumblr. And I would love to talk to anyone about this at any time. Questions about BDSM, questions about being a cam girl. I love to answer questions. So I will go ahead and answer one question I'm probably going to get after I post this. 30 double F. You're welcome. Alright, good night.